Hey, everybody, this is Arthur Haggerty again with our second episode of Ask the Expert. I have with me this week again, Mr. Tim Rowen from Rowan's Allstate Insurance in Turlock, California. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that we all can relate to, whether we own a home or whether we are renting a house or an apartment. We're going to talk about homeowners insurance, and we're going to talk about renters insurance. And Tim, thanks for joining. Appreciate you being able to attend today and kind of share your wealth of knowledge with the audience. So we're gonna get right to it. Tim, real quick, for those that didn't watch last week, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about you?
Okay, it's Tim Rowen with Allstate Insurance in Turlock, California. We've been in business for over 3 decades and serving the public in every capacity of homeowners insurance, rentals, auto insurance, life insurance, the whole 9 yards. And thank you for inviting us back.
You're welcome. And last week, Tim, we talked about auto insurance, and I'm sure for those that watched last week's episode, I'm just like you did. I'm sure it was an eye opener to know about the liability limits that California imposed back in the 60s doesn't even come close to what we need to make sure we cover to protect our loved ones, our assets, and all the things of that nature. So, our home, we're talking about homeowners insurance first. It's probably our largest asset.
Right.
And I know for me, I can't speak for the rest of the audience, I'm always trying to find ways to save dollars. But we want to make sure that, whether we just have a primary home or investment property or both, that we have coverage just like we have for auto to make sure that we protect ourselves. So with that being said, tell us what we should have as a minimum,
okay,
and how you would assess to recommend what somebody should have outside the minimum based on where they are in life. So I'll turn it over to you, Tim.
And I totally agree with you too, Arthur, that your home is your biggest investment for most people. And that's the last thing you want to have the worst coverage on. So the big thing with homeowners is to make sure that they have the house, the dwelling itself, insured for the correct amount. And most insurance companies have a tool that will evaluate that for them. That tool is going up in evaluation costs because, as we know from watching the news, talking to contractors, all the above, it's really, rebuilding costs is really going up for everything. Wood prices are soaring like 400% this last year from what I'm seeing on the news.
Yeah, that's true. I talked to one of my contractor or maintenance people, and we have some rental property, and he was telling me that cost for building materials is just skyrocketing.
Right. So I have one, just to let you know, I have one client that I was working with in Livingston the other day. He has a very large house. It's almost 5,000 square feet. His rebuilding cost that he had on the house was about probably 20 to 30% too low for what it was really evaluating out for rebuilding costs. And he had no cushion on the dwelling at all. And so what I mean by that is a lot of insurance companies have like a 25% cushion. So if they're wrong, because we're not contractors as insurance agents, we use a computer tool. Or if rebuilding costs go up in the middle of the year, like what happened last year, and you don't have enough coverage, you don't get caught holding the bag for $100,000 or $200,000, out of your pocket. So in fact, Allstate has a 50% cushion, which is the highest in the industry. So in this gentleman's case, he had about $800,000 in coverage, and we were coming up with $997. So a couple $100,000 more in coverage, and we saved him a couple $100 a year in costs.
So if someone purchases their house, say 5 years ago,
right,
and they get that initial rebuilding cost coverage on the property,
right,
but as we can see in the Valley, in California, and many other areas, in Merced, the appreciation is 9+ % a year.
right.
So how do you, if 5 years goes by and you add that compounded over 5 years, how do you make up that gap and ensure that you have enough coverage for rebuilding costs if something happens.
So every year, the insurance companies and industry reevaluate the rebuilding costs. I've seen it in years over my career where we had houses either under or over insured. What you're talking about is market value. So
Okay.
the rebuilding cost is a totally different thing. Right now, rebuilding cost is higher than market value. So if you went to build a house today yourself, even, it would be a lot more probably, you would know better than I, than what you could buy an existing house for.
Yes.
Because the materials are just going through the roof. And
Gotcha.
and so every year the insurance companies are supposed to keep your dwelling reevaluated and increased as needed. But like I said, with our 50% cushion, that gives you at least some cushion, even if it happens in between the reevaluation.
So for instance, one of our properties, the house in Atwater.
Right.
I'm sure if you saw that coverage, the rebuilding cost or replacement cost was very low.
Right.
So that was not done by my previous carrier.
Right.
Because if we would have had to rebuild that, it would have been, hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what the coverage had. And that was in place.
Right.
So what can homeowners do in order to protect themselves?
Right. Really, you should ask if there's any cushion on the coverage, because that's not the industry name for it, but it's thing people can relate to. So I call it a cushion, and just ask them, is there any extra coverage on top of the dwelling coverage that you're providing? And then that way they'll know if they've got something to hold them over in between, because from this year till last year, in fact, I have a contractor client that built 6 houses. He purchased the last 7 lots in Schaefer Lakes in Atwater, and he built 6 of his houses last year and sold them. And this year he was starting on the 7th one and told me, I wish to God I would have done all 7 last year, because the cost of building is soared. It's more than doubled for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the rebuilding costs, and that was helpful to kind of give even myself and the audience some education.
Right.
What other coverages what are essential on the dwelling?
Okay, so your personal property, your contents, making sure that you got replacement cost coverage on there. Most companies put enough coverage in there because they go by 50 or 70% of what the dwelling's insured for. So that's going to continue to go up on its own as well to keep up with inflation. But you want to make sure you have replacement costs on there, because a lot of companies don't just automatically throw that in there. I'd say most of them do, but a lot don't still. Okay. So it does keep the premium down a little bit, but if you ever have a loss, they're going to depreciate stuff like you buy it in a garage sale instead of going and buying brand new stuff. Okay.
Now how about I want to say medical payments, but like liability if someone hurts themselves in your property?
No, that's a very good one too, because here again, just as important as the dwelling is to make sure that you don't have somebody attaching the value of your home because of a lawsuit, not just the value of the home, but you're again going back to the liability like we talked about on the auto. You can get your income attached at 30-40% of your income if you don't have enough liability coverage. Someone gets hurt on the property, they slip on your garden hose or something, laying around, or they just slip. It doesn't matter if you're really got an obstacle there that caused it. It's the fact that it happened on your property. Another thing, liability on your homeowners covers you off the property. So I know you used to play softball, and I did too. And I slid into a guy at third base one time, which was the position I played, but accidentally took the guy's leg out. It didn't break it or anything, but it did hurt. And if I had seriously injured him and he couldn't work for a long time, or it was a permanent injury, he could have sued me, and my homeowner's protection would have kicked in on that as too for the liability.
Yeah. Okay. So we have, replacement cost. We have the contents of our dwelling, the personal property, I should say.
Right.
Then we have the liability. Are there any other coverages? we're not in an earthquake zone per
Right.
se. We're not in a
Right.
flood zone.
Right.
What other coverages do you feel that are essential for those?
Well, actually, most of them are said is in a flood zone. So
Okay.
most of the houses there have to get flood insurance. I was an
Okay.
agent there for many years, and now my office is in Turlock. I live in Atwater, so I'm all over the place, but I have a lot of clients everywhere. But yeah, the Merced's still a big flood zone. Not all the newer homes are in the flood zones because they built properties up, but most of them in town are.
So when you say that, because I don't believe we have flood insurance on ours particularly, but you say a lot of the older homes that are maybe, I'm not going to necessarily call it certain parts of town, but in different planes of the city that are built.
Right.
Gotcha.
There was a time 90% of the town was flood zone.
Gotcha. Okay.
And G Street was called G grade at one time for a reason.
Anything else you can think of related to homeowners insurance?
Yes, absolutely. There's actually a coverage that is really important called building code coverage. And most policies, most agents don't get a lot of conversation going about that. But we've had clients in sticky situations and in really unsticky situations because of that. They come to us when they have their auto with us, talking about the problem they're having with a fire claim with their other insurance company, and they didn't have building code coverage. So we always offer it, or some of our policies automatically include that endorsement. So the building code coverage is when the cities and counties are constantly changing their codes for building. And so if you're behind on that, you got the wrong wiring, plumbing, roof type, anything like that, they can make you change it. If there's been damage to your home and you're rebuilding part of that, they can make you change the whole thing. And the rebuilding, the codes coverage will make sure that they give you a lot of extra coverage for that type of thing.
Oh, I did not know that. That's amazing. Okay.
Yeah, it's expensive if you have to do it on your own.
I see. Okay. So we have, the replacement cost, liability, personal property damage, building code. Should consumers reach out to their insurance agents and ask them about this building code coverage? Because I think most of our audience has never heard of that before.
Right. And the other thing too, yes, they should. And the other thing too is the loss of use. So it's just not really blown up on your page when you get your renewal declaration page, but you should look at it. That's what pays for you to relocate if there's damage to your home, because most of the time you have to move out, unless it's just a small partial loss. You usually have to move out. And then while they're renovating or rebuilding completely, it can be a real expensive option there that you'll have to deal with. My yard care guy that lives in Atwater lost his home recently, and luckily he did had a good amount of coverage for that, and he had replacement costs. He had all the right stuff. It was a competitor of mine, but they did a good job writing the policy, and they covered him well, and he's well on his way to getting his house rebuilt. It's going to take a year to a year and a half to rebuild the house. So sorry, my phone's doing that. But that's those are things that people don't think about. Think about having to move all that cost, buy all this emergency, food and clothing and, dishes, tools, all that stuff. And the cost of getting started at another place, all of the big fees and down payments, and just finding a place nowadays is expensive,
Yes, it is. Okay. So what we're going to do, that was a wealth of information. We're going to table the renter's insurance until our next episode.
Okay.
But I would encourage the audience to definitely listen to this. If you have any questions, if you have your current agent, feel free to reach out to them. If not, I'll let Tim tell us about how you can contact them. But we want to emphasize, you want to make sure you have, and if I say anything incorrect, Tim, please let me know. I just want to summarize.
Right.
The dwelling, personal property replacement, personal or liability coverage, the code, what did you call it again? The
building code coverage.
Building code coverage, and I believe there was one more.
Loss of use.
Loss of use. Okay. Those are all great. So Tim, I always learn something new when I talk to you about all things insurance. That almost sounds like a pun. All things,
Yeah.
Allstate.
It's a dad joke.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, let the audience know how they can, if they have questions, how they can get a hold of you.
Right.
And I'll reach out to you.
Okay. So my business number is 209-667-6777. Tim Rowan at allstate.com is my email address. And if you miss me, the messages are always picked up at the office, and email is a very good way to reach out to me, and I'll always see it. Even if I'm out of town for a while, I can, get back to you. So
great. Well, everybody on Facebook, we appreciate you tuning in today. This is Arthur from Paramount Residential Mortgage Group. Episode number 2, Ask the Expert with Tim Rowan from Rowan Allstate Insurance in Turlock. Tune in next week. Thank you very much. Everybody be safe out there. Have a good day.
thank you, Arthur.
Thank you. Oops. Hold on, Tim.
Hey, I'm gonna call you from my cell. I got to get running.